Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. I am Becky. I am here to share with you a little bit about what I call life in black and white, right? So I am a Christian who loves the Lord, and I would say that I've been a Christian my whole life, but I don't. It's so hard when I look back sometimes over my life and go, how could you have done that and been a Christian? Or how could you have been that way and been a Christian? But the reality is that, like, at a very young age, like, I would see my mom praying and having Bible study, and I would pray with her, and I think the first time I witnessed to somebody, I was 7 and it was an adult. You know what I mean? Like, I always loved and believed. However, I also was experiencing extreme trauma and things that just were affecting the way my brain was being wired. And as the enemy does, he affects who you are at a young age. He'll come at you to try and deflect and chip away at who God created you to be. And he was successful. However, God will take what was meant for evil and he will work it out for good, for the good of those who love him, right? And so I am diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, ADHD, C-PTSD, which is complex PTSD. So it wasn't just like a post-traumatic stress experience, but several throughout my life that I'm not going to really get into too much in this channel, because number one, I'm not trying to trigger people. And number two, like, I think you get it. You know what I mean? Like, it's my first experience with SA, which, if you don't know what that is, it's an abbreviation for abuse with an S in front of it. I'm sure you can figure that out. Was at 3 years old at the hand of a 19-year-old, the son of my babysitter. And I remember that vividly. And we moved around a lot as we were very poor. My mother had no help from her parents whatsoever. And her dad actually put us out of the house when my grandmother died so he could sell it with no regard to where we were going to go, what we were going to do. My mom's mom was no help. She just took off with her husband and moved somewhere in the country where there was like no phones. You couldn't even reach her if you needed to. And my mom had been through quite a bit herself. My dad was mentally ill, schizophrenic, in and out of the hospital, and he left her. Thank God he left her, actually, because him being in our house would have been awful. When I was a baby. So, you take all that trauma and stuff, and then you see, like, I had this desire to very much, like, be this good girl at church, that I saw all these good girls and boys, and I just was this black sheep that didn't really fit in. And then even in the neighborhoods that we were in, they were, low income, poverty neighborhoods, and, like, I'd be like the only white kid in the class or whatever, so I still stood out there. And then by the time we came back to some neighborhoods that had some white people in it, then they're like, you should go hang out with the black people because you sound like them and you talk like them and you're not one of us. And so then I had those kind of identity issues, which borderline people already have identity issues, so I'm sure that contributed to that. I remember being at a women's retreat. And at the end of the retreat, you could stand up and give testimony and you could share. And I shared a little bit of my story, but I was also sharing about the fact that that particular place that I visited had such a great impact on me when I had heard some particular speakers there. It's just a great place, Pine Valley Bible Center, if you've ever heard of it, in Pine Valley, San Diego. It's an amazing experience. So any of you women who ever want to go and have an amazing time, they usually do it around March each year. So I remember, giving my testimony and sharing a little bit about that. And then the woman who got up and spoke after me shared about her son's cancer. And I instantly said, thank you, God, that is not my story. Little did I know my daughter already had cancer. And we just hadn't been diagnosed yet. I did not know. So my daughter was diagnosed later on that year, a few months later actually, with Ewing sarcoma cancer. And it was in her face, and it was taking some of her vision, and it was in her brain. It was a whole thing. You can read the book. If you want to read about that, my first book that we published was called Life's Drastic Detour, A Mother's Journey Through Childhood Cancer, by Rebecca Hammond. It is available on Amazon. But after my daughter's cancer, so during my daughter's cancer actually, I was blogging how she was doing, because I was already blogging anyway, right? And when you're going through something like that, I have no time to be on the phone. It's not that I didn't love people. It's not that I didn't want them to be informed. But all of my time and energy was into her and what was going on in that moment with our family. And so I wanted to make sure people knew what was going on, but I wasn't going to be answering phone calls at the time. So I decided to use my blog as a way to keep everyone up to date with what was going. And I pretty much wrote almost every single day. I tried to. At the end of the night, once she went to sleep, I tried to write, which I probably also helped me process the day as well. And there's times in that book where I was definitely towards the end getting some serious fatigue, watching my daughter die in slow motion. She did not die. Ultimately, God did save her life. But when your kid is being pumped with 5 different chemos and in and out of radiation, and you're basically just living in and out of the hospital, and you're watching them die, hoping that the chemo and the radiation kills the cancer before they kill your kid, and that then your kid will still survive, and then all of the devastating side effects that she has experienced since then, along with her own mental health journey. It's not easy, right? We weren't promised easy though. Later on, after my daughter was in recovery, we went to Camp Ronald McDonald. And at that camp, I actually ran into that woman. And as soon as I heard her and saw her, I knew who she was, because she was my fear. I didn't want that testimony, remember? So she pulled me aside and said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And she said, "Your testimony really struck me. It really stood out to me. It touched me." And I said, "Yeah, your testimony stood out to me too. I didn't want your testimony. And yet here we are." God is always amazing how he brings things full circle like that. But anyway, so after her cancer, I was a wounded sheep, and I kind of knew it, but I also didn't want to just step out of leadership and be weak or let the enemy win, I think is maybe what my thought process was. And I was trying to connect with a therapist, and she wasn't available. And there was just all these reasons why I couldn't get the help that I needed, all these roadblocks. And I remember that we were putting on a women's conference, and we talked about God. We talked about the way that God protects us through the people that we have around us who intercede with us through prayer and are there to help lift us up, right? That we're not doing this, we're not walking this journey by ourselves. And then I did a teaching with a girlfriend of mine about not underestimating the enemy. And there's a very real enemy that is out there, and he is trying to come at you. He is trying to tear you down. He is waiting for the wounded sheep to get left behind so he can devour it. That is real, okay? So we talked about not underestimating this enemy and how important this circle, right? Your circle is to intercede and to love on you and to help lift you up when you're tired, and to pray when you're too tired to pray. And little did I know that at that time that the enemy was blowing up that circle from the inside out. And I'm not going to get into that, but my whole support system was blown to pieces. And I still was not healed from the journey cancer. We had just went on for that year recently before that, and there was other things going on too. But I could tell you that he was in for the long haul, and the enemy was really like just moving all the pieces into place. Looking back at it now, it seems way more obvious, but in the moment, you know, I don't think that I always think like, well, now that I passed the cancer test and everything I had already been through, that must have been it. And there's never going to be an it where he's going to leave you alone, first of all. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about the mind of a borderline, okay? And this is a Christian with borderline. So I wanted to give a little bit of insight. This is insight for people who might love somebody with mental illness, but I also want to give insight to you, the Christian who is struggling with mental illness, because going back and trying to understand this is how I can hopefully prevent it from happening again and share insight for others. The kind of mentality I had to wander as far away as I did when I knew God as intimately as I did. I know that a lot of Christians were like, well, then your faith must not have been real. You must have been weaker than you, whatever. Fine. Don't watch this video if you don't want to. I'm not talking to you then. Those of you who want to know the realities and the complexities that go along with this is for you. So I want to read you a blog that I did right before everything happened and the church imploded and my circle imploded. And then I'm going to read to you a blog that I did, and I'll give you the date so you can see how my mindset, how drastically it shifted, okay? So I wrote this in April of 2017. It's called Hurt People, Hurt People. I have heard this statement before, and yet it keeps playing over and over in my mind like a catchy love tune or a heartbreaking country ballad. If we look at this statement for a minute, it's really quite profound. Hurt people, hurt people. Now, is that an excuse? Is it a justification? I think it can be as simple as an observation or as deep as a life-changing revelation. That part is really up to each one of us. Wouldn't you agree? I have shared many times about my horrible past and how much all that pain affected who I had become. And at some point I realized that my past and present pain which officially categorized me as a victim, caused me to become a victimizer to others. Not just others, but the others I care about the most. When confronted with my actions, it was very easy to point to my pain as my excuse. After all, I was hurting too much to see past my own pain. Here's a secret. I still hurt. I hurt a lot. When I remember my past abuse, it hurts. When my daughters hurt, I hurt. When my friends and family hurt, I hurt. But now that pain is no longer a license to hurt others. Why, you may ask? What has changed? Well, the insight into my actions and how they affect others. I had to decide to look past my momentary pain, as horrific as I thought it was, and consider those I love. It isn't easy, but I have to do it every time I feel overwhelmed with pain, loneliness, or disappointment. I know that God is a forgiving God, and that if I fall, He will forgive me. So then, do I go forward in that pain, only thinking of misusing God's grace? We are all going to be tempted, but not beyond what we can bear in Christ, because a way out will be provided. Will we still fall sometimes? Sure. But then we get back up, try to look for another way out the next time. We do not continue in our sin knowing there is a way out. If I decide to continue in my sin, hiding it from others, what would be the point? After all, am I fooling the Holy Spirit? If I do that, would I not grieve the Holy Spirit in my darkness? If my sin is brought to light and I claim there's no way out, does that mean God is a liar? Did He fail me in the place and give me more than I could bear without a way out? So I'm not going to read the whole thing. The next time I wrote was in September of 2017. So 5 months later, this is how drastically stuff started happening in my mind. I was just starting to, what I didn't realize, I really thought I had been healed of my mental illness. I didn't realize that borderline could go into remission. And As everything started to crumble around me, I really underestimated not only the enemy, but mental illness and the brain. So in 2017 of September, I wrote, I haven't written in so long. Why, you may ask? Maybe it's because I haven't been myself in so long that I'm not sure my words will be encouraging, or perhaps I am not as trusting of my thoughts. Yet here I am now, feeling drawn back to one of my great loves, writing. So I openly share with you my hurt, my confusion, and my overall disappointment. There I have said it, I'm disappointed. Although I talk about hard times and trials, I have found the constant pain exhausting. I know that my daughter's cancer changed me just as all the trials before had, but this altered my sense of being safe in my Father's arms. I often hear people talk about having hope and faith. I have talked about faith in many blogs, but hope, the hope part I'm struggling with. Hope is resting in the fact that God is in control. This should bring us peace, right? I know God was in control when my baby was diagnosed with cancer. I know He has never stopped being in control. Not when I was molested as a child, raped as a teen, or abused as a wife. This may sound like a pity party, but please bear with me. My mom's hope didn't stop me from suffering at the hands of the evil one, and my hope didn't stop my daughter from suffering through chemotherapy and radiation. Hope to me is about looking forward to an eternity without suffering past this world. That is great, and it does bring me joy, but not enough to stomp out my anxiety and what God may allow us to suffer next. So I went on to talk about the fact that I know that I'm not in a good place. But after that, I didn't write again until May of 2021. That voice is completely different. So this is my entry in 2021. I haven't written a blog in years. In all honesty, I have no wisdom to share in this dark place. All I have are thoughts. Really, they are more like questions, ponderings, if you will. I have come to question all I believed and even who I am now. If who I was based on a foundation of certain beliefs and those beliefs changed, how can I not be shaken to my core? Do you stand still during an earthquake? Well, I had a soul shake, if you will. Now I could pretend and play the role of a godly person as so many do, but that's not me. If I am honest, which I have always tried to be with these blogs, I didn't want to share this season in this way for a few reasons. First, I never want my doubts to affect someone else's faith or walk or whatever. I also fear being attacked and rejected by the self-righteous religious folks who think they are doing God's work. I used to be one of them. I know how defensive I would have been. Here we are nevertheless. What do I believe now, you may be asking? I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm trying to figure that out. As of right now, I still believe in Jesus. I believe He was and is exactly who He claims to be. I believe in God, but I no longer trust Him. I surely do not believe I am His child. I needed a protector, a comforter, and I needed His strength. I called to Him in my weakest, darkest hour, and what I got was silence. Now, so I read a little bit of each one of these blogs to you because I really wanted you to see this is all the same person. And that was really pretty much me growing up. Like, I would go to a youth camp and I would be like, okay, yes, I'm going to be the best Christian. I'm on fire for God. I'm going to go to school the next day and I'm going to tell people about Jesus and I'm not going to cuss and I'm going to do all this good stuff. And by the time I got there and these kids in the world, I'm cussing. I'm right back to being this other person. And in my mind, it didn't work. I'm supposed to be a new Christian. It didn't work. I've been baptized several times because it wasn't working, right? And then in my mind, at the point where I felt like I was doing all the things you were supposed to do, right? I'm a leader. I'm helping put together conferences and teachings and lessons, and I'm trying to be faithful during the cancer, and I'm doing, and that obviously was not the only thing going on. There was so much going on. I had my first child at 15. my second at 17, my third at 19, and the youngest I had at 24, 25. So clearly, being a teenage mom and everything I went through, there was always, and I mean always, something going on. And so I would get through a trial successfully, being faithful, and be like, okay, I passed that trial. And then when the trials just got harder and harder, I'm like, so let me get this right. Like, we started at 3 and I just am never ever going to get a break. And then I'd start feeling sorry for myself. And what's really funny is that the first blog I wrote totally addresses the other 2 blogs, because it was my site, right? Like, Peter got out of the boat, and he was the only one brave enough to get out of the boat. Well, call me to you. You see no other disciples saying, well, let me come walk on the water too. They're like, are you crazy? And he gets out of the boat, which is me. Like, okay, God, send me where my feet can't fail. I'll get out of the boat. And then I got out of the boat, and then the storm was so overwhelming that I totally took my eyes off Jesus. And then as I drowned it, I'm like, where were you? I'm the one who took my eyes off of him, right? I'm the one who started focusing on the storm, forgot that I even asked him to call me out of the boat. And so the point of all that is to see that, like, I really was in such a dark place and if you would have told me that my borderline was going to act back up, and I would even doubt God, like that God was good, or that I could trust him, or that I was really saved at all, I would have told you were crazy. There was no way. There was no way. I'll never say that again, because number one, I do understand that mental illness, everybody's brain can only take so much. Everyone's nervous system can only take so much. There's a certain level of trauma that people just should not endure. And the only reason that I'm here today doing as well as I am is because God is so good, and I spend time with him every single day. When I get up in the morning, first thing, like when I'm up ready to start my day, I'm in the Word. Me and the Lord. It's me and you. There's nothing more important. No matter what's going on, we're going to have our time together. Now that I have been spending all this time with him, and getting to understand who he is better, has helped me understand who I am better, helped me understand how much stuff the church as a whole, the American church, has just had wrong for so long. We have come to a point where we have such a deeper understanding now of the scripture, of the words, of really an insight into who God is, and this hyper literalism that the American church has tried to use to co-sign so many things throughout the years that did not represent God in any way. And that's still happening. You want to think that your super patriotism is representing God. It's not. It's not, because at the end of the day, we are supposed to be bringing God's kingdom here to earth. We are supposed to be addressing these issues. It's not the government's job to solve any of this. It's our job as Christians. We're supposed to be helping the poor and the needy and women who don't know what to do with this pregnancy. We're supposed to be loving on these people and reaching out to them and letting them know that Jesus is the answer, right? So my point in all that is to say that as we continue to grow in our faith and our understanding of who God is, and our understanding of who Jesus is, and our understanding of who we are as people who are supposed to represent love and peace and patience and kindness, and being there for the brokenhearted and for the weak and for the less fortunate and those who are outcasts and those who are looked down upon. That looks very different from a church standing in judgment over people, pointing at people, thinking they're better with people. The closer you get to God, the more you know that you ain't better than nobody. I know I'm not better than nobody. So my channel is going to be about people with mental illness who want to understand how to rectify these things and how to reconcile the thoughts that your illness is telling you, the thoughts that the enemy is telling you, and the truth of God's voice, and how you can recognize which voice, and how important it is for you to pursue staying in God's presence and pursue His Spirit on a daily basis, if you want to have those attributes winning out over your illness. Also, therapy is real, it's necessary, and medication, there's nothing wrong with it. Don't let nobody in this world try to tell you that you're not supposed to be taking medication for mental illness, because that's between you and your doctor and God. And I have done with and without, and I am on meds right now, and I am okay with that. That they're just like you need to be on medication for your diabetes, if you have a heart condition, whatever it is, that is okay. Medicine is from God. The miracle of God giving people the knowledge to know how to help us with medicine came from the Bible, and it's not anything to be ashamed of. So don't let nobody shame you about that. And don't feel like you're being failure or less than because you need help. Our bodies were damaged and scarred because we're in a fallen world. And although we're trying to bring His kingdom now, we're still in the process. We're not perfected yet. We're still here. So this channel is going to be addressing a lot of these different issues. We'll be taking them on one at a time, and we'll just be addressing issues that I'm coming across as somebody who still does very much deal with mental illness, and who plans on still trying to go in and help others with the same struggles, because that's the whole point of us overcoming whatever God throws our way, right? It's because we need to turn around and use that for His glory and help others. So hopefully you're still with me. If you are and you're interested, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, share with a friend, and I will be back soon with another video. God bless.